I've been asked twice now to write a formal account of what happened in the utility corridor on Sub-Level 3, and both times I've told Commander Orath the same thing. I treated a patient. That's the account. He keeps expecting something more, and I keep not having anything more to give him. Let me try to be thorough, since he's gone to the trouble of asking. I was on night rotation. I've held the custodial contract on Rethus Point for 4 years running, because nobody else wants the night shift, and I've never minded the quiet. You get the station to yourself after the 3rd hour. The cargo teams are docked and sleeping. The transit passengers are sealed in their berths. The administrative staff have cycled out. It's me and the cleaning equipment and the distant sound of the ventilation system doing its work. Sub-Level 3 is the old maintenance warren. Service conduits, power relay housings, the environmental processing arrays. Nobody goes down there except me and the 2 or 3 engineers who draw the maintenance rotation, and they're rarely scheduled at night. It smells like recycled air and machine oil, and a particular brand of industrial sealant that I've never been able to identify. After 4 years, it smells like my job. I was running the corridor scrubber along the eastern passage when the lights went. Not a gradual dim, a hard cut, the way a breaker trips. The emergency panels kicked in 2 seconds later. Red amber, casting everything in the kind of color that makes you feel like you're inside someone's lung. The station's internal channel lit up immediately. Commander Orath's voice, tight and professional, calling a containment protocol. Unknown biological signature, Sub-Level 3, Sections 7 through 9. All personnel to secure positions, security to arm and muster at the sub-level access point. I stood in the amber light with my scrubber and considered my options. I was already in Sub-Level 3, Section 8. Whatever they were containing was here with me. I should tell you that I was a field medic for 11 years before I burned out enough to want something quiet. 2 deployments on border stations, 1 on a contested resupply corridor that had no official name. I've been in spaces where things were wrong in ways that defied easy categorization. I don't panic easily. My hands stayed steady on the scrubber handle, and I looked down the corridor. About 8 meters ahead of me, sitting against the base of relay housing C7, was the smallest living thing I had ever seen outside of a clinical setting. It was pale. That's the word I keep coming back to. Pale the way old bone is pale, or the inside of a shell. Silver white, very slight, the size of a human child around 5 or 6 years of age, though the proportions were wrong in ways I noticed only gradually. The head somewhat larger relative to the body, the limbs very slender, the fingers long and tapered. It was wearing nothing I could identify as clothing, just its own skin, and a faint luminescence in the skin that pulsed slowly, the way a heartbeat shows itself in a throat. It was looking at me. Its eyes were large and very dark, the iris taking up most of the visible surface, and they caught the emergency light and held it the way deep water holds light. It was not threatening. It was not moving. It was sitting with its back against the relay housing, and one arm held slightly away from its body, at an angle that I recognized immediately, because I have seen that position 10,000 times. It was guarding an injury. I stood there for a moment. From above, on the upper decks, I could hear the containment team assembling. 12 guards by the count Orath had called, armed, protocol adherent, moving through the access shafts toward my position. I put the scrubber handle down against the wall, out of the way, and I sat down on the floor. Not slowly, not with any particular drama. I just sat down, cross-legged, the way you do when you want to get to a patient's eye level and you don't have a chair. The deck plating was cold through my work trousers. The corridor smelled like it always smelled. The child, and I was already thinking of it as a child, because that is what it looked like. And because in my experience, the correct response to a small injured thing is the same regardless of its taxonomy, watched me sit down without moving. I have a first aid kit in my maintenance bag. I've carried a first aid kit in whatever bag I was carrying since the 2nd month of my first deployment, because I decided very early on that I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It is a battered gray case with a magnetic latch and a red cross embossed on the lid that is mostly worn off. It contains field dressings, a hemostatic agent that works on most carbon-based biologies, A tissue bonding applicator, a small diagnostic wand with a bioscan function, a dose of broad-spectrum analgesic, rated for non-human patients, and a pair of nitrile gloves. I opened the bag and took out the kit and set it on the floor between us. I snapped on the gloves. "I'm going to look at your arm," I said. "You don't have to let me, but I'd like to." It didn't understand the words. I wasn't expecting it to. I said it anyway, because that's what you do. You tell the patient what you're doing before you do it, even when the patient is unconscious, even when they can't possibly understand the language. It's not for them, entirely. It's for you. It keeps the procedure human. The child watched my hands. I picked up the diagnostic wand and turned it on, and held it at a neutral angle, not pointing it, just letting the blue indicator light show. Then I moved it, slowly, toward the arm it was guarding. It didn't flinch. The scan took 4 seconds. The wand's small screen showed me what I needed to know. A soft tissue laceration, mid-forearm equivalent, roughly 3 centimeters. Not deep, not touching anything structural. Bleeding had slowed on its own. Its biology was doing its job. But the wound was open, and the corridor was not sterile. I was aware, distantly, of boots on the deck above me. The containment team was in the access shaft. I had perhaps 4 minutes before they breached the sub-level bulkhead. I worked. The hemostatic agent first, applied with the field applicator, a small amber bead of gel, drawn along the wound edge. I watched to see if there was a reaction. There wasn't. The child's arm stayed still, in a way that struck me as a decision rather than passivity. It was choosing to hold, not frozen by fear. I know the difference. Fear has a vibration to it, a held breath quality. This was something else. This was assessment. I said, quietly, as I worked. "You're going to be fine. This is just to close it up. It'll sting a little, or it might not. I don't actually know what stings for you, but if it does, I'm sorry." The tissue bonding applicator next. 2 passes along the laceration. The child's eyes tracked my hands the entire time. "You came a long way to end up on sub-level 3, I said. "I've been asking myself all week why nothing ever comes to visit that isn't a manifest error or a maintenance requisition. And now here you are. So I suppose the station is keeping me honest." The child made a sound. It was not language, not in any form I could parse, but it was intentional. The shape of it, deliberate. A low, brief tone, the pitch of it somewhere between a musical note and the sound a tuning fork makes. I didn't know what it meant. I nodded anyway. The way you nod when someone tells you something in a language you don't speak, and you want them to know you heard. I was putting a light field dressing over the closed wound when the bulkhead door at the end of the corridor blew open. Not the control panel, the door itself. The emergency override. A sound like a compressed air drum going off in a closed room. 12 guards in full containment gear flooded the corridor. Weapons up, tactical lights strobing across the emergency amber. Voices overlapping on their channel in that particular frequency of controlled urgency that I associate with people who have trained for something and are now confronted with a version of it that their training did not quite cover. The child did not move. I didn't move either. I kept my hands where they were, gloved, visible, doing the work. And I said, without turning around, "Nobody come any closer." There was a moment where I genuinely did not know which way it would go. Protocol is protocol, and protocol said, secure the unknown biological contact first, and ask the custodian questions later. But there is something about a person sitting calmly on a floor doing first aid that is very difficult to interrupt with any authority. I have found this to be true across several careers. I looked back over my shoulder. "I've got it," I said. "She's patched up. Give us a minute." Commander Orath's voice came through one of the guard's earpieces, loud enough that I could hear it from 8 meters away. He wanted to know what I thought I was doing. "Field medicine," I said. "I'll give you a report when I'm done." There was a silence that had several distinct textures in it, and then the guards held position. I turned back to the child. Its eyes had moved past me to the guards and back to me, and I watched something in its expression recalibrate. The same thing I've watched in patients who've been frightened by the arrival of additional personnel, and then reassured by the primary provider staying calm. It is a very old transaction, I have seen it across 4 species. It appears to be, in some form, universal. They're loud, I told it, but they're not going to come any closer right now. I smoothed down the edge of the dressing. The bioluminescent pulse under its skin, which had been slightly ragged since I found it, had steadied. There, I said. That's better. And then the corridor filled with light. Not the emergency amber, something different, coming from no fixture I could identify, filtering through the ventilation grills and the seam of the access hatch above and every gap in the deck plating, as though the light were already inside the station and had simply been waiting for a signal. White and very clean, the kind of light that makes everything it touches look precise. The guards were shouting. Orath was on the comm. I was looking at the child. It was looking at me. The light was intensifying. A retrieval, I understood, though I had no framework for that understanding. Just the absolute certainty of it, the way you sometimes know things in the field that you cannot explain but act on anyway. Its people had come. The child had perhaps 10 seconds. It raised its uninjured arm and held it toward me, palm out, fingers spread, and then it closed those long tapered fingers around 2 of mine. Not tightly. The way a child holds a hand when they are not afraid but want the contact anyway. The way you reach for something you know you're about to leave. We stayed like that for the count of 3. Then the light took it, and I was sitting alone on the deck of sublevel 3, with my kit open in front of me, and 12 armed guards staring at the empty corridor. Orath came down himself, 20 minutes later, once the station's sensors confirmed the biological signature had gone and the power systems had restabilized. He stood in the corridor in his command uniform and looked at me for a long time. "What did you do?" he said finally. "What did you do to make that happen?" I was closing the latches on my kit. Treated the laceration, I said. Kept my hands visible. Talked to her, so she'd know I wasn't panicking. He looked at the spot on the deck where the child had been sitting, as though the floor might explain something the custodian couldn't. "Its people have been monitoring this station for 4 months, he said. We've been running the signal analysis since the incident. 4 months of passive scan, biological profiling, behavioral observation." He paused. "They assessed every warm body on this station, 12 crew on rotation, 7 contractors, 3 transit passengers, 43 total biological profiles." He looked at me. "Yours was the only one they flagged as safe approach," he said. "The analysis team is trying to determine what the selection criteria were." I snapped the last latch. "I move quietly," I said. "I don't carry weapons. I stop to check on things that look wrong. I talk out loud when I'm working, even when there's no one to hear." I picked up the kit and stood up. If I had to guess, I'd say they watched someone do that for 4 months and decided they knew what kind of person it was. He didn't say anything. I picked up my scrubber handle from where I'd left it against the wall. "I have the rest of Section 8 to finish," I said. "I'll have the incident report to you by end of shift." I pushed the scrubber down the corridor and left him standing there. It was not a remarkable thing, what I did. I sat down, and I opened the kit, and I did the job. The extraordinary part, if there was an extraordinary part, was that someone had been watching long enough to know that I would. I think about those 3 seconds sometimes, when the corridor is quiet, and the ventilation is doing its low hum, and the station is as still as it gets. She held 2 of my fingers. I've treated a lot of patients in a lot of conditions, and the ones that stay with you are not the complicated cases. They're the ones where you got it right for the simplest possible reason. You were calm, and you showed up, and you sat down. That's the account. I don't have anything else.